Michael Gillis, Ainslie View, East Lake Ainslie. We're at MacKinnon's Camp Ground, which was established around 1970. It was started by Donald MacKinnon. Yeah, and I was associated with him, or partner, I guess, at the time. I grew up in Juddick South, which is in Inverness County, obviously out along Route 19. I grew up there with my mom and my grandmother. She was a single mom. So, yeah, I grew up there and went to school in Juddick, I guess. Finished grade 11 there in 1967, I guess, 1967. That was grade 11. But prior to that, my mom was, guess what you call today, she was a home care worker. She worked mostly along Route 19 between Port Hawkesbury and Port Hood. Just doing farm chores, house cleaning. Like her sisters went off to Boston to do something similar, but she stayed in the area here. And yeah, we lived with my grandmother. While she went off doing her work, I spent most of the time with my grandmother, because she'd take me sometimes to some of those work sites, but I was more comfortable back, which I called home, with Grammy. So yeah, so that was it. So then in 1965, she had heavy surgery, but my grandmother passed away in 63. So the home went to her brother, my uncle. So anyway, she was working out. So I went to, I guess you call it a boarding school, and she spent some time there too, recovering from her health issues. So then in September of 1965, I guess at the time it would have been social services she was looking to find employment. She was ready to go back to work. So, not sure how the word got out, but anyway, the MacKinnon household here, it was Mr. MacKinnon, Donald, who we'll call him. He lived here with his mom, who was elderly, and they needed home care for her. And so anyway, they made a trip out. Had some neighbor, he didn't have a vehicle at the time. Had some neighbors, John and Marion McLean, just up the road. They took Donald out to visit my mom, I guess to have an interview maybe, or whatever, so anyway, see if she would be interested in coming. Of course, Lake Ainslie back then was probably like going to Toronto. Even myself, although I was grade 11, I had no idea where Lake Ainslie was. But anyway, she did come here in September and did the usual farm chores. He had cattle and gardens and potatoes, and she was familiar with all that stuff. She made cheese, she milked the cows, and she did stuff like that along with the housework. The Campground Act, let me see, in 1969, Donald's sister and brother-in-law lived on the property here. They had a little convenience store, which was across the street then, and there were 3 cottages. So people came fishing and stuff. So there was actually no campground. So then his sister and husband sold, and he bought the cottages. Which I guess was 3 cottages, with the store was a cottage and the other 2 cottages. So he bought them. And so then my mom helped him look after them as well. But in 1969, Maggie, Mrs. MacKinnon, she had passed away. So then it was just her and Donald at the time. So I guess at that time she wondered, what should she do, or if she should find other employment or something. But he had 3 sisters. One lived in Louisiana, Catherine lived in Louisiana, Florence lived in Massachusetts, and Nellie, who was J.D.'s sister, McGinnis, she lived locally. So they kind of discussed and met with my mom and figured that he probably should have some help, or I was wondering if she'd be interested in staying on and whatever. I guess, as the saying goes, it happened, and she stayed until she passed in 1999, and he passed in 1995. Yeah, so it actually started like in 1970, just like this fisherman coming, pulling in and asking him, can I pitch a tent, or can we stay for a weekend? And at that time he did have potatoes, and cows were grazing on the property here. So so then he got the notion to maybe put something here, whatever. So I did a little electrical work and stuff. And then in 1976, he allowed me to build a little convenience store office type of thing on the site here. Yes, it was much smaller. It was just half of the main section there. So anyway, I built that in 76. But in the meantime, when I guess, going back a little bit, 1967, 68, I went to school in Mabo because I wasn't sure what I was going to do, or anyway, there were no funds or no money, so it was pretty, so not sure. But anyway, I ended up going to school in Mabo. They were offering a 1-year accounting course, and there were some of my classmates from Judik who were going to attend that, so that was kind of an incentive for me. I could have stayed here, I guess, and went to maybe Wakagama or something, but obviously I didn't really know anybody. So anyway, I opted out, and I boarded in Brook Village at the Campbell household for that winter, and commuted back and forth here, hitchhiking. And in the winter time, Don would come across the lake. I'd get the school bus to the west side, which is just across there, and he'd meet me with horse and sleigh, and would come over here and spend the weekend, and then I'd go back to school. And the finer weather, there was no vehicles. They didn't have a vehicle, so some of the neighbors would sometimes take me back on Sunday evening or whatever. So in the meantime, when I finished my course in Mabo in 1968, I spent the summer around here. I did some road work with the construction company. The road wasn't paved at that time. They were just getting ready to pave it. So I did some odd jobs. And by this time, Donald's brother-in-law, J.D. McGinnis, and his sister Nellie opened a nerving service station in Inverness. They opened that in March of 1965. So then they were sort of looking for someone to sort of do some office duties, or just clerical work, or pump gas, or whatever. So I did go to work there in September, and come November or something, I didn't really felt like I enjoyed it that much or whatever, and worked up the nerve to say that I think I was going to quit. But anyway, we met with JD, and he said, "Oh, you better stay for the winter and see how it goes." That being said, it was a long winter. I stayed for 40 years. I retired from there in 2008. From the Irving in Inverness.
Okay.
Yeah, so I worked there, and then evenings and weekends I worked here, so I kind of had a work ethic on the go, I guess.
Yeah, so
my wife and I were married in 1981, Karen McIsaac from Inverness, but she, when we got married in 81, she worked for Donald here. She did the mowing and some painting, and she did work in the convenience store. And we have 2 sons, Mike, who was 43, and Curtis, who was 39, going to be 40. So the 2 boys, so she looked after them. And that being said, Donald passed in 1995, so he willed the property to me, and with and the house and his house across the street there to me as well, with the stipulation that my mom be able to stay here as long as she lived. So, which was quite a thing to do. So yeah, so I guess that being said, we're very grateful to the MacKinnon family and the McGuinness family all through the years. Yeah, we've been close, and yeah, I worked for Gary, who was JD was the original owner, but he worked on Gary. We were close. He has since passed, but he had two daughters, Carrie Lee and Erin, and unfortunately Erin had a tragic accident in 1995. She just graduated high school, and she had a fatal car accident outside of Inverness, so it was pretty tragic for us all, because they were, yeah, they hung around with me at the service station after school. They worked there. We were very close. And that being said, Carrie Lee now lives in Calgary, and very close. She's sort of kind of like a niece, an adopted niece to me, and our son Curtis lives in Calgary, and she's very good to him as well, and has him over for different events and meals and suppers and all that stuff. Yeah, no, it was a great community. You know, we were accepted greatly. And that being said, that was one of the stipulations when my mom came here from. She was Roman Catholic, and there were kind of like some talk, you know, going to a Protestant community, or you know, what's that going to be like, or whatever. But there was one other lady, Peggy McDougall, lived down the road, and she originated from Glendale, and she had lived here, and she was Catholic, so she attended the church in West Margree, which is the one we attend to today. So anyway, there was arrangements made there that, you know, anytime she wanted to go to church, there'd be no issue. They had a vehicle, so they'd take her. So yeah, I guess. And then another issue with her coming, with them wondering if she'd stay here. At that time, there was no indoor plumbing in the house, and the heating was just a wood stove in the kitchen. But anyway, that being said, she was familiar with those situations. Prior to her coming, I think that summer they had 2 or 3 younger ladies come, but it just wasn't for them. So I guess at the end of the day, we lucked out. Yeah, but anyway, no, the community was great. 1971, we formed the Lake Ainslie, well, it was the Ainslie Upper Margree Volunteer Fire Department, and has changed to the Lake Ainslie Fire Department. So I joined that, and started off as secretary treasurer, so I got to know all the guys, and the camaraderie was great, and we still have lots of great friends to this day from that club, so which was great. And yeah, the people have been terrific. It's all I can say. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Yeah. Like I said, back in the day, there was no car here, but after I started working, I got a little old car, and anyway, that's the one thing you notice is now everybody has plowed driveways up around your yard, where you just shovel a little path at the end of the road, just enough to get the car off, and that's how it went. You just walked to the house, you carried your groceries, you did all that type of thing. No, I just think it's the friendships and the memories of all the old neighbors, which now most of them are deceased. It is changing around, obviously, but there is changes coming, or more changes in the last few years than there has been. And we've made so many numerous friends here at the campground. I mean, we had, well, it was unfortunate. We had one gentleman this was his 38th season with us, but he just passed away on this Sunday, unexpectedly. He was just 77, but he was here for 38 full seasons. So yeah, they become like family, and then their children come camping, and their grandchildren come camping, and there's all kinds of memories. Exactly, yeah. Yes, you come as strangers, you leave as friends. And we've met so many, even this year, like a couple from Florida who just loved it here, and you know, you exchange addresses, you exchange phone numbers, and you know, travelers or tourists, they're different. There's some people that are that like to find out as much as they can, and there's others that just want to say hi, and that's how it is. It's fine, but yeah, we seem to like to chat and find out things, where you're from and what you're up to, and yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. Well, we have like 100 sites. Yeah, it is, and that being said, our oldest son Mike, who now lives in where my mom did, and Donald, he renovated the home, and he lives there with his wife Natasha, and we have 2 grandchildren. Fortunate to have them next door, Nicole and Ethan, and they're 11 and 9. And Mike has, like, I guess, not like myself, but he has a full-time job. He's a paramedic, works at a Hawkesbury, but his evenings and weekends and stuff are all spent here, mowing and cleaning and doing chores, so he's kind of following like in my footsteps, I guess. Yeah, which is great, and he enjoys it very much. Kind of ironic, we sit under this big tree because we do have a photo of 1927, and this tree looks the same then as it does today.
Wow.
So it's got some years behind it, I guess. Looking at it, you can tell too. But I suppose back in the day, you want to say it would be the fishing that brought them here, and I guess it still does. But I guess the other thing I would say it's the friendships that they have made over the years with their camping friends, and we have, I guess, like any community, you have different groups of people gather, and they have their own interests, they have their own fire pots, they have their own storytelling pits, and yeah, so it's quite interesting.
Camp them here all year, right?
They do, yes. The seasonal people leave them here all year, and we do have about 20 overnight sites, and their sites are down along the water there. You're back in sites, and they're July and August in particularly, they're like fully booked. We get people who come and want to spend the month, and yeah, and our May is very good. We get a group from Lewisdale who fill up down there, and they're all one big family, so they all do fishing, they all do their own cookouts, and invite us to some of them, and yeah, they're a great bunch of people.
It's like a village.
Yeah, it is a village, yep, it is, yep. Lots of stories and lots of, yeah. No, it is, it's very interesting. Yeah, the churches have changed down. We, like I said before, we belong to South West Margree, which is a Catholic church, and it's it holds about 250, and we gather about 40 people on a weekly basis, and it's a little hard to operate, but we still seem to be doing okay, I guess, and we're probably better off than some of the other churches, but I guess some of them are C&Es. Christmas and Easter. You get a full house then, but yeah, I guess I grew up in, like I said, in Judic or something, and with my grandmother and that, and I guess I developed a faith or something for church, which I did. I recall when she was quite ill at home, she wanted us to go to get a priest. There was no talks of getting a doctor. She decided she needed a priest, so it was just a different way of living today than back then. So
was it like, I know it doesn't matter if it wasn't around here.
No,
it's just around the bend, really.
Yes, it is just around the bend, but I would say it's very similar. I mean, really, like we just had an old farmhouse with no electricity, with just the kerosene lamps and the wood stove. And Mary Flora and Mamie, who moved to Boston. Mamie had no children, but Mary Flora had 2 children, Dottie and Eileen, and Dottie, who has since passed a few years ago, she was kind of like a sister to me because she came home, and we visited there since forever, and we visited there when our kids were small and stuff. But my grandmother did go to visit there in, like I want to say, in the mid-60s or something, and of course they had indoor plumbing and they had electricity and stuff, and she was very nervous. She didn't even want to turn on a light switch. She was scared to touch it. But then, Dottie's dad said, well, yeah, we go to her place and she opens the stove and there's sparks flying and she's going with a big match to light a kerosene lamp. It didn't seem to bother her one bit. But as far as flicking a light switch, she had a problem with that. So,
Yeah, right.
well, probably waiting for it. And you know what? I'm sure there were no funds for it. That's the issue. I don't even know where the funds would have even came from. I kind of wonder that to this day how they actually, because my grandmother was singled. She lost her husband like in 1935 on a railroad accident. So she grew up. She had, I want to say, like 8 children. So yeah, so it was. My mom was the youngest. She was actually a twin, and her twin passed shortly after birth. So yeah, so it's I just can't imagine. It was probably, and I would say around here, I mean, it was probably quite similar. To be honest, the whole county was quite similar. Yeah, we lived about 2 miles from the one-room school, and that's where I attended to grade 3. So, and I think they did the same in this area. I guess it was just very common until the new schools opened around 63, 64, I guess. So, yeah, so you walked, as they say, you walked to school, you walked home, and sometimes somebody had a horse and wagon, you'd get a ride, or horse and sleigh, maybe in the winter time, somebody was driving by, so you'd hitch a ride, but other than that, it was...
How many siblings did you have?
I have no siblings, I'm a single child.
Okay. So
Yeah, so yeah, because...
a lot of the farm chores, you probably had a lot of chores.
Well, there were a few chores, I guess. Yeah, we did have a little... Yeah, there was a few chores. We did some little milking and stuff, and yeah.
And how old were you when you came here?
I was actually 16.
16.
Yeah, I was 16. Yeah.
Have?
Oh yes, he had a great friend next door, Greg. I mean, who was since passed, and yes, I have Donnie. Oh yeah, Donnie down the road, Clifford down the road. Yeah, I have a number of friends, and Alec's brother. Well, Alec, but he moved home. But his brother Reggie, who we dated when I dated Karen, and Reggie dated Sharon, and my wife worked in Halifax, and so did Sharon, so we made trips to Halifax together on weekends, and anyway, yeah, so no, still have lots of great friends, and yeah, everybody's your friend. Yeah, everybody's great, and yeah, I took in some square dances. Yeah, more so in the early years. Just used to go to West Margree, and we had some in Scottsville, and no, I like listening to music, but I can't carry a note in a bucket. But I enjoy listening to singing and songs, and yeah, no, I do. Yeah, and I think that's what brings a lot of the tourists to Cape Breton is the music, and they want to hear some music, and they want to go to some bars and pubs, and yeah, which is great. You have the Red Shoe, and you have all kinds of places that you can go to. Most restaurants now have entertainment different times of the week, which is great. Just a little piece of heaven, I would say. Yeah, really. Yep. Yeah, I loved it from the day I seen it, to be honest with you. Yeah, like I said, I loved it from day one, and like I was just going to say, I had some cousins who went away to work in Windsor, Ontario or something, but I really never had a desire to leave. I don't know, I guess I'd probably felt maybe that my mom needed me, I'm not sure, but probably, and then Donald in the later years, I know if I decided to talk about going somewhere, they weren't very keen on it. Although I did make one trip in 1975 with 2 of my friends, Donnie McLean and Clifford Collins down the road. We went in September of 75, and we did a cross Canada tour. We were gone for 2.5, 3 months, which was a great experience, and we worked in Winnipeg for a month and did some chores and picked some grapes in Ontario. We did little odd jobs till we had a little kitty going, and we added to that and paid our expenses, and I think at the end of the day when we came back we still had a little in the kitty. So anyway, yeah, it was fun, lots of memories there.
Good
adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah, the adventures are great. It was back then it was a big adventure. I think people thought we were a little different. But anyway, it was fun and glad we did it, and we still talk about it today. So yeah.